What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast with you on this Monday. Could the Patriots actually land Abdul Carter at number 4? We'll have the latest on that. Also, the boys are back in town for the voluntary program. I'll have 3 pre-draft questions for those at the facility this week. But before we get to that, some exciting news that I want to share with all of you. I've been brought on by the Locked On Podcast Network as the new host of the Locked On Patriots podcast. You can listen to that podcast. You can watch that podcast on YouTube as well every single weekday, Monday through Friday. And here's the best news. The Locked On Patriots podcast is not going to impact this podcast at all. It is not going to impact the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles. Those podcasts will continue. This live stream, obviously, it's happening right now. This will continue. It's going to be a lot of content for all of you. And yes, I'm going to treat each podcast as a unique podcast, giving you different content so you don't feel like you're missing anything and you don't feel like I'm being Captain Repetitive. So I'm very happy to be part of the Locked On Network. Hopefully, some of you, all of you, jump over to the Locked On Patriots podcast and the Locked On Network and make sure you subscribe to that channel. All right, let's start with Abdul Carter. We all continue to pray to the football gods that the Patriots will end up with one of Hunter or Carter in this draft. Patriots sitting at 4. It would be a dream if the Patriots could land one of those 2 guys. As we've talked about, they are the 2 blue chip prospects. Some would tell you that Ashton Genty is also a blue chip prospect in this draft, but there aren't many. We've got the latest. We've got the latest on Carter and what might be happening. What might be happening with Carter in a few weeks, night 1 of the NFL draft. Adam Schefter posted this earlier today. Penn State edge rusher Abdul Carter had breakfast Sunday in State College, Pennsylvania, with Giants head coach Brian Daboll. Carter also is now scheduled to visit the Giants on Thursday in New Jersey, and he figures to be a top 3 pick. Figures to be. Let me first say this. That's not a guarantee. And I think some people will treat this as a guarantee. Some people will treat this as Adam Schefter saying that Abdul Carter is going to be drafted in the top 3 of this draft a couple of weeks from Thursday night. But that's not a guarantee. Saying that Carter figures to be a top 3 pick doesn't mean he's going to be a top 3 pick. He might figure to be a top 3 pick. He might want to be a top 3 pick. His representation might want him to be a top 3 pick. But that does not sound like it's a guarantee. It might sound like it's a likelihood. But this is the game that we play at times now in 2025, when you have an insider like Adam Schefter, who is also being paid to drop his opinions. He goes on the Pat McAfee show, and he has his opinions. He goes on TV, right? These get-up shows and all these other things, right? I don't think he is on First Take often, if at all, but he goes on to SportsCenter, and he mixes his opinion with his reporting, and there's confusion because of that. There's confusion over, is Adam Schefter reporting something, or is this just his opinion? And Schefter, I don't think, has helped that at times, because the way that he handles certain questions, the things that he says at times can confuse you. I take this more as an opinion than a report. Saying that Abdul Carter figures to be a top 3 pick is different than saying Abdul Carter will be a top 3 pick. Adam Schefter going out there and saying, I've spoken to people, and Carter is going to go in the top 3. That's a report. This is opinion. This is even speculation. Meeting Brian Daboll for breakfast, lunch, dinner, a golf game, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this is what happens during this time of year. Prospects meet with coaches. Prospects go to dinner. Prospects go to lunch. Last Friday, Shadur Sanders obviously met with Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner. He went out. He had a good time. He spoke to the team. This is what happens. This is what happens this time of year. So this could be just simple due diligence, right? Having a breakfast with Abdul Carter on the Sunday before he visits you on Thursday is probably a great way for Daboll to get a feel for the young man before he comes in for his official visit. So this to me is more opinion, speculation than hard reporting from Adam Schefter. But we do have to ask the question, what happens? What happens if the Browns end up drafting Shedeur Sanders? What if that happens, right? Because Schefter's saying that Carter figures to be a top 3 pick. Well, if the Browns pick Sanders at 2, what do the Giants do at 3? The Giants are left with the option, which is the perfect world for the Giants. They're left with the option of either Hunter or Carter, right? So that's why we don't know. It all sounds like Shedeur Sanders is not going to go in the top 3 right now. It sounds like Sanders is not going to go to Cleveland at number 2. It sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to end up trading for Kirk Cousins. Sounds like, feels like. It's not fact. We don't know. Cleveland Browns could have a late change of heart. Jimmy Haslam could walk in and say, I want Sanders at number 2. And if that happens, then you've got the Giants looking at Hunter and Carter. And if you're the Giants, you have 2 edges right now that are bona fide starting edges in the NFL. You paid a lot of money. So what would you do? Would you draft Hunter and play him at cornerback, a position that you need? So if the draft order goes Cam Ward number 1, Sanders number 2, Travis Hunter number 3, then guess what? Abdul Carter did not end up in the top 3, even though he figured to be in that top 3. So we still have a lot to sift through. We still have a lot to see unfold. The Giants could have their choice of both. Which one of the 2 blue chip prospects do you want? Here's another question I have. Are the Giants leaking this information to tempt a team to try to move up? Are the Giants leaking this information so the Patriots could look at this and say, maybe they're interested in Carter, right? Maybe they're interested in Carter. What happens? What happens if Sanders goes 2 and the Giants are left with Hunter or Carter? What if the Giants are interested in Carter more than Hunter? Maybe I place a phone call if I'm the Patriots, right? What happens if the Giants, they don't want Abdul Carter? Maybe something went wrong at the breakfast. Maybe Carter ordered the wrong type of eggs. Maybe Daboll's an over easy guy and Carter ordered, I don't know, sunny side up. I have no idea. So there's still a lot to figure out. If you ask me, I do not believe that the Giants are going to trade the pick. I think the Giants are going to sit there at 3, and they are inevitably going to be looking at Hunter, Carter, or Sanders, and that's the decision that they're going to make. I don't think they are going to want to trade that pick and voluntarily leave the opportunity on the table to draft one of Hunter or Carter or even Sanders, given their quarterback situation. We talked about that a few weeks ago, even with Wilson and Winston. It's obviously not figured out. All right. Patriots are returning to Gillette Stadium today. There was a nice little video that the Patriots released on Twitter. If you saw it, a bunch of guys walking in, including Christian Barmore, which was awesome to see. The voluntary workout program has begun. I want to give you 3 pre-draft questions regarding the Patriots, the guys that are in the room right now. I've got 3 big questions right now for the Patriots as we get ready, a couple weeks away from the draft. I'll have that coming up in a minute. But first, number 1, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Those 3 things help us an awful lot. We continue to build this community. When you click that thumbs up on the YouTube channel, that helps drive that algorithm, right? So don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Do you feel good about Carter falling to 4? Do you think the Giants would draft Carter if it was Carter or Hunter? Do you still think there's a possibility that one of the Browns or Giants could draft Shedeur Sanders? Throw your comments in. Comments also help us with the algorithm. So don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe. We are less than 50. We had a big jump. We are less than 50 subscribers away from hitting our goal of 6,500 subs by night 1 of the NFL draft. That's 2 weeks away from Thursday night. We can hit 6,500. Hopefully we beat it. If we can beat the 6,500 goal before the draft, then we'll shift the goal. But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And, of course, my friends at Spotify, Apple Pods, rate, review. 5-star reviews are awesome. and follow the podcast. All right, before I get to the 3 big questions before the draft, now that the guys are showing up to work at Gillette today, pull up a $20 super chat from Ken. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate the super chat. Schefter lost all credibility when he reported if Rodgers, Packers drama, and later had to admit he made it all up and was making assumptions. I'll take Ian Rappaport over him any day of the week. Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's very interesting. Schefter, again, he's kind of forced in this role to give opinion and then report on things. And it's dicey. It's dicey because when you're on Pat McAfee and he asks you about a certain player and you're jumping around and you're giving your opinion on this certain player, we all need to understand that that doesn't mean it's written in stone. Schefter's not reporting that. But of course, we live in 2025. And context is not a strong point. It's just not a strong point. Nuance is not a strong point. That's why we try to hit those kinds of things as often as we can, right? On this live stream and podcast. That's what this show is about. We dig into the weeds. But when Schefter's out there and he's on Pat McAfee, for example, and he's giving his opinions, sometimes people pull those opinions and they throw them out there into the ether, and it's treated as reporting. And it's made even tougher, Ken, when we have aggregate websites and aggregate social media accounts that are just plucking one sentence out of a 5-minute answer to drive traffic. It's more of a media conversation, Ken, and I don't want to bore people, but it gets more difficult. It gets more difficult by the day to figure out who's reporting and who's actually sharing their opinion. Thanks for the 20. Pete Pretorius, $5 super chat. Congrats on getting the Locked On gig, Nick. Well deserved. I'm especially glad to hear this means more Nick Gattles content. Well done, my friend. Well, I appreciate you. And I know some people will have their fill of me, and they'll say enough is enough, Nick. I spend Monday, Wednesday, Friday with you. 3 days is more than enough. But if you want some more content, you've got more content. You've got this live stream, this show. It's going to continue Monday, Wednesday, Friday, live at 3 on YouTube. You've got the Locked On Patriots podcast now, Monday through Friday. That will be released every morning for all of you if you want to check it out. And we've got the Greg Bedard podcast. And if you really want more content, of course, I got the Patreon, which includes Celtics, Red Sox, and Bruins talk. But I thank you, Pete, for the $5 super chat. It is very much appreciated, my friend. All right, let's get to the Patriots returning to Gillette today, the voluntary workout program. This is a big day. This is a big day. I don't want to go over the top with it. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but this is a big day for the Patriots because this is the first shot for Mike Vrabel and his coaching staff to stand in front of the team and address them, right? I'm sure Vrabel's talked to a lot of the guys. I'm sure he's been on the phone. I'm sure they've had, hellos and conversations as guys are walking around the facility. But this is the first time that Vrabel gets to stand in front of the room as the head coach and address the team formally. And that goes for the rest of this coaching staff. So I do think that attendance is crucial. It's voluntary, but it's crucial because you want to get off on the right foot. You don't want to miss this kind of thing. You want to be sitting there and you want to listen to what Mike Vrabel is trying to accomplish, what he wants this program to look like and sound like and feel like, what he wants from you, the individual player. That message has to get across, and it starts today. Can't start soon enough. Not with last year's debacle. Have those conversations. Have those meetings. Josh McDaniels gets to stand in front of the room. Talk to some of the guys, right? Just to address the team. But let's not get it twisted. This draft coming up 2 weeks from Thursday night will fundamentally change some of the roster dynamics. And yes, I do plan on being live on that night, round 1 of the draft 2 weeks from Thursday night, because it could fundamentally change some of this roster. If you draft Travis Hunter, for example, that's going to impact the wide receiver room. If you draft Carter, does that impact Anthony Jennings? How does that impact Keion White? So it's going to be a trickle down. And of course, if you draft an offensive lineman, if you draft Campbell, if you draft Membu, how does that impact things? If the Patriots end up with not 1 but 2 first-round picks because they trade back in, how does that affect the rest of this football team? So The draft is going to fundamentally change things. But as we sit here today on April 7th, this Monday, 3:14 Eastern time, I've got three big pre-draft questions for this organization right now and this team. The first question is there buy-in? Is there buy-in for Vrabel's vision? Is there buy-in for Vrabel's vision from the players? We've heard from the guys that signed as free agents. Of course, those guys are going to sit there and tell you that they have bought in. Part of the reason why they signed, they didn't have to sign. Of course, money helps. But when you sign with a team, you're signing because you're committing to that head coach. You're committing to that program. So we don't need to hear it from Morgan Moses or Robert Spillane or Carlton Davis or Milton Williams. We don't need to hear it from those guys because we know they've bought in. If they didn't buy in, they wouldn't have signed. But is there buy-in with other players? Marcus Jones, Christian Gonzalez, Keon White, Ramondre Stevenson. We can go up and down the line, right? Is there buy-in from those guys? Because we know if there's not buy-in, they gone. This is going to be different. Mike Vrabel has proven that, hey, look, there's absolutely nothing left for me to say to some of these guys. If it's time for us to move on, then it's time for us to move on. Juwan Bentley, gone. Devon Godchaw, traded. David Andrews, gone. Joe Milton, traded. Mike Vrabel's not going to waste any time. So who has buy-in? And if they don't have buy-in, who's gone? We'll find out in the next couple of weeks because the standard has been set. Here's question number two, big question number two. What is the evaluation of Vidarian Lowe in that building? Now, we know right now the Patriots, they wanted Ronnie Stanley. They didn't get Ronnie Stanley. They wanted a number of other offensive linemen. They didn't get any of those offensive linemen to play left tackle. They did not want to extend themselves too much for Cam Robinson, who got a one-year deal in Houston. So what's the evaluation of Vidarian Lowe? Do they think Vidarian Lowe just isn't good? Do they think he's below average, well below average, average? Do they believe that Vidarian Lowe could be slightly above average? Do they think that there were bigger issues last year with the team and that Vidarian Lowe had some injuries and the coaches? And how do they evaluate Vidarian Lowe? What is their grade, right? What grade would they put on Vidarian Lowe heading into this camp this summer? Because that's going to be crucial. If they don't feel like Vidarian Lowe is worth anything, then why not try to be signing a veteran right now, right? We haven't heard any word about Tyron Smith. We haven't heard any word about DJ Humphries. Yeah, those guys have plenty of flaws. They got plenty of questions. But if you don't believe that Vidarian Lowe can do anything for you, then you could still go out there and sign a veteran. But more importantly, how does this staff evaluate Lowe as we get ready for the draft? Again, 2 weeks away from Thursday night. I think we'll have an idea. Because if the Patriots show extreme urgency and draft Will Campbell at number 4, or they end up drafting somebody else, they move back into the first round to draft a left tackle, right? They move back in to draft Josh Simmons, for example. That will tell us they don't feel great about Vidarian Lowe. But do they think higher of Lowe than we do? Now, it's obvious they thought Ronnie Stanley was an upgrade. They thought that some other guys were upgrades. Do they think that a couple of dudes in this draft class could be upgrades over Lowe? So that's a big question. Like, what is the evaluation of the coaching staff for Vidarian Lowe? I know many people think he's done. He's worthless. I think he might be able to give you some swing tackle capability. But how do those guys feel at the facility about Lowe right now, April 7th? Here's my third and final question. Do Jalen Polk and Javon Baker show any positive signs? And it starts today. Jalen Polk is there. He was on the Patriots video and social media. So we're going to be looking at Polk. We're going to be looking at Baker. Can one of or both of those guys show any signs of getting it? Because they certainly didn't get it last year. They didn't get it on the field, and it didn't seem like they got it off the field with the social media, the other stuff with Baker, with the cop run-in and all that stuff. It starts today. Did Jalen Polk walk into that building today ready to be a different guy, ready to take accountability, ready to go back to the quote-unquote safe pick he was during draft time last year? Does Jalen Polk present to Mike Vrabel that he's gotten serious, that he understands that last year was a disaster? Does he show any signs of getting it? And the same can be asked for Javon Baker. Do those two young receivers show any signs of truly understanding how bad it was last year and how they've got to get their tuchus in line this season? Because I don't care how you feel about either guy. I think all of us would agree that if those two guys don't get it, at least one of the two guys don't get it, wasting 2 picks in last year's draft is an abomination. There's still hope. And I think many people have given up hope. I'm not giving up hope. I'm not completely done with either guy. I've said this plenty of times. I'll say it plenty more. I don't give up on players after one season. I just don't. And that's not just a Patriots thing. It's an NFL thing. It's really an all sports thing. I think if you give up on a guy after his rookie season, it's too soon. It's too soon. You got to give them at least a year and a half, 2 years to find their footing. And then after year 2, it's like, okay, now my patience is wearing thin and I'm moving on from this guy. So I haven't given up hope for either of Baker or Polk. But if you did end up wasting a 2nd-round pick last year and wasting a 4th-round pick last year, man, oh man, that can go in line with the rest of the other draft issues this team has had for way too long. So does Jalen Polk, does Javon Baker, they're back in this building today. Do they show any examples to this coaching staff that they're figuring things out, that they're getting it? It's a big question. It's a big question because you don't want both of those guys being wasted picks. That would be brutal. All right. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. I've got one more thing I want to talk about. I wanted to put a bow on the Joe Milton conversation because some stuff came out over the weekend, added a little bit of context to what happened, why the Patriots traded Milton, why they traded him when they did. Karen Guregian, Mass Live, OG, she wrote, based on the intel gathered from sources during the week, Milton fancied himself a starter. He didn't see himself being given a legitimate chance to compete. He also believed he was good enough to give Drake May a run, if not overtake him for the top job. Now, I know some people in the Twitter world, I tweeted this comment out, this quote out from Guregian's piece at Mass Live, and I know some people said, hey, look, what, Nick, isn't this what you want from your backup? Isn't this what you want from your backup quarterback? Isn't this what you want from the guys that are trying to fight for their jobs and fight for their lives? Don't you want the backups to want to make that push? And I understand what you're saying. You want guys to be competitive. You want guys to challenge, right, for their spot. You don't want guys to give in and say, I'm going to be a backup for the rest of my life. You want guys to be competitive. But I think this is more about how the player acts and or would react to May starting. I think that's the bigger issue. I don't think Vrabel and company were turned off that Joe Milton believes he can be a starter, wants to compete, right, and was hoping to compete for the job. But the bigger problem here is how Milton was handling it and how he would react to May starting. And what is the player saying? What is the player doing? Is he handling himself in a professional way? I can't answer that question. The guys in the building can. I can't. They were concerned. They were concerned, as I said, when Milton was traded, when we did the podcast with the breaking news. I said it then. I'll say it now. They were concerned that Milton was going to become a malcontent. He was going to be unhappy, and he was just not going to help this team in the way that they wanted him. The coaching staff wanted him to help this team. Here's more from Guregian. Milton, who at 25 is 3 years older than the Patriots starter. We mentioned that during the breaking news podcast, right? The fact that Milton is 25, Drake May's 22. They came out of the same draft class. Milton probably looks at May as almost the underling. He's younger than me. We got drafted the same year. I played more college football than that guy did. I see him at practice. I think I'm better than him. And so the age difference does matter here. As Garigian writes, Milton, who at 25 is 3 years older than May, made it clear behind the scenes he no longer wanted to be sitting behind May. And there's the key line. There's the key line. If you want to compete and you want to fight for the job, that's cool. But you have to be willing to accept the consequences. You have to be willing to accept losing the competition. You have to accept, yeah, I want to be the starting quarterback, but I understand he was drafted 3rd overall and he's going to be the franchise quarterback, right? You have to have something in you that accepts that. And Garigian writes that that's not the case, that behind the scenes, Milton didn't want to sit behind Drake May, and he made it known. He did not want to be Drake May's backup. He didn't want anything to do with it. And as Garigian writes, with May considered the team's franchise quarterback, as he should be, you drafted him 3rd. With May considered the team's franchise quarterback, Milton was the proverbial fly in the ointment. He was the elephant in the room and possible disruptor to the new sheriff in town, his team, and his prized young quarterback. This is pretty simple philosophy. If you've got an unhappy employee, you move on from that employee. Milton was unhappy. And we said during that breaking news podcast, Vrabel's trying to get everyone aligned. He's trying to get everybody on the same page. He doesn't want any issues. And he doesn't want any issues in individual rooms. He doesn't want the quarterback room to be a mess because Joe Milton's unhappy and he's getting, angry or whatever he's doing. He's miserable. You don't want to deal with that. You want each positional room to be happy. You want each guy on this team to understand his role, to embrace his role. That's what Mike Vrabel's looking for. And if you can't get aligned with the vision, you're going to be out. And we can't pick and choose here, right? Like if you want Vrabel to run the program and you want Vrabel to build the culture and you want Vrabel to make sure that guys are aligned, even if you loved Joe Milton because he could throw the football 1 billion yards, even if you loved him, if he doesn't fit in with what Vrabel's trying to create, then you move on from him. And we'll see if Milton makes something of his career. We'll see what happens. So why did the Patriots make the trade when they made the trade? Mike Reese wrote the timing, according to a source, wasn't a coincidence. It was not a coincidence. Today marks the start of the team's voluntary program, and Vrabel views that as a meaningful checkpoint in the process of establishing team culture and the dynamic that ideally unfolds within each position group. So why did they trade Milton when they traded him? Because Mike Vrabel said to himself, hey, look, Monday is when we get all the guys together. And as I just mentioned a little while ago, it's the first time you can address the team. It's the first time that you're really trying to push your goals across. It's the first time you're trying to get everybody together. You're trying to create one big happy family if you can. And Vrabel said, hey, Joe Milton's not happy, so we're moving on. We're moving on. He doesn't want to back up Drake. He's not going to be thrilled being in the quarterback room. And so we're going to move on before we get the guys together on Monday. Because I don't even want that. I don't even want that to be part of the conversation. QB's coach, Ashton Grant, on Joshua Dobbs. I think this tells you why Dobbs is here. He said, we were together in 2022 and the beginning of 23 in Cleveland. Grant called Dobbs an awesome teammate. His preparation is second to none, and the value he'll bring to that room. So again, Joshua Dobbs has less raw talent than Joe Milton, many would say, right? But Joshua Dobbs knows his lot in life. He's an awesome teammate. He's going to do what he needs to do to get Drake May prepared each and every week for the next opponent. And that's the most important thing. Drake May is your franchise quarterback. It's simple. He's your franchise quarterback. You drafted him 3rd. He showed flashes last year. I'm not telling you it's a guarantee he's going to be incredible, but he's your guy. He's your guy. And so you want to, I don't think this is a case of Drake May being, susceptible to talk around him. I don't think this is Drake May being afraid for his job with Joe Milton there. I don't think Drake May gives two bleeps, honestly. I think he's a very confident guy. He understands that he's got talent. I don't think Drake May was losing sleep over Joe Milton. I think this is the staff and Mike Vrabel saying, we've got to support Drake May the best way that we can. And part of that support is he can work hand in hand with his backup quarterback who's not trying to kneecap him, preparing Drake May each and every week for who he's going to face. Somebody who's a great teammate and that will build cohesion, old Tommy Heinsohn word, build cohesion in that quarterback room. Many people say, well, they could have gotten more, right? A lot of people were upset about the return the Patriots got. And I wanted to highlight a couple posts that I saw on social media. So Burt Breer posted one interesting piece of context. While there were talks with other teams, in the end, the Cowboys' offer was the only one the Patriots had for Milton. So they took the bird in the hand and moved the 2024 sixth rounder. So there was a report last week during that breaking news podcast. Jordan Schultz tweeted out that the Patriots had a better offer than they took from Dallas. Burt Breer says that's not the case. I'm not getting in the middle of it. It's a source off. Jordan Schultz has one story. Burt Breer has another story. For what it's worth, Greg Bedard agrees with Burt's reporting and says the Patriots did not have a better offer on the table. Dallas was the only team that had an offer on the table. Now, I wanted also an objective view of Joe Milton because Brian Hoyer went on Cleveland radio and said that Joe Milton would have been the number one quarterback in this draft class. And some people ran with that, right? Some people ran with the idea that Milton would have been QB1 in this draft. And somebody asked Dane Brugler on Twitter, or at least referenced Joe Milton being the best quarterback if he was coming out in this draft. Brugler said for his own rankings, and he does it every year, incredibly comprehensive, right? Scouting reports and all of that. Dane Brugler, one of the best in the business for The Athletic. It's like a draft Bible he releases every year. Dane Brugler said that he would have had Joe Milton ranked probably around 10 and not 10 overall. Dane Brugler said that if Joe Milton was coming out this year with the tape that he had during his college career, he would have ranked Milton as the 10th quarterback in this class. That's Dane Brugler. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you, Dane Brugler would have had Joe Milton ranked as the 10th quarterback in this class or somewhere around there. He said probably around quarterback 10. And there was some pushback. And Brugler responded, said, I think what the Cowboys gave up for Milton was fair, around what was expected. Milton had 6 years in college and struggled to stay on the field. Really no reason to think another year would change anything. Joe Milton wasn't good in college. That's a fact. He wasn't good. He had raw potential, but he wasn't good. And there's legitimate questions about his ability to process consistently, especially at the NFL level. There are questions about his accuracy and how he tends to fire the football 99% of the time. He doesn't have great touch. There are all those questions, and you could go look at the scouting reports last year. This is not revisionist history. They're all questions. And what teams said were, hey, look, Joe Milton's being offered, right? Joe Milton's available, but we're not going to go crazy over one game against the Buffalo Bills when the Bills were playing backups and wanted to lose that game in the final week of the season. We're not going to go crazy about that one game when we've got 6 years of college tape on Joe Milton. We studied a bunch of his college games. We studied him up and down as a quarterback. We talked to his teammates. We talked to his coaching staff. We saw him at the combine. We had individual interviews with him. Some teams might have brought him in for a top 30 visit. So think about it this way. You're not Joey the Patriots fan, right? You're an NFL GM. And you did a ton of work on Joe Milton for last year's draft class. You had your scouts pour through it. You watched a ton of film. And what you saw is what ended up happening, right, with Joe Milton in the draft. Milton was drafted in the 6th round. Doesn't mean he can't be a starting quarterback. People will inevitably throw Brock Purdy and Tom Brady. Yes, there have been quarterbacks drafted in the 6th round, undrafted, 7th round, whatever. And by some kind of grace of God, they ended up working out, and Brady ended up being the GOAT, okay? But there's also like hundreds of quarterbacks that were drafted after the 1st round that stunk and we're out of the league within a year. Okay. So the chances are like, 1% for Joe Milton to be good. Honestly, it's like 1%. If you want to jack that up to 5%, fine. But teams are looking at it saying, we did work. We watched that guy for 6 years in college. We watched him in college. We watched him at the combine. We had all of these conversations about this guy. We had interviews with coaches and teammates. We had interviews with him. The league, doesn't mean the league can't be wrong, but the league said that Joe Milton was a 6th-round pick. And so if you're one of those guys, if you're a GM and you had Joe Milton as a 6th-round pick last year, that Buffalo game ain't going to sway you because you've got all that work done. You're not going to burn all of that work because Joe Milton had one good game given the circumstances. Now, if Joe Milton played for like a month, if he put a month of film together in the NFL, if he played a month and a half, if he played 5 or 6, now we're talking about different circumstances. But one game, final week of the season, just wasn't enough. And so inevitably, Vrabel had to answer the question, do you risk the culture being thrown off by Joe Milton on the off chance that you could maybe get a 4th-round pick in 2026 for him? Are you willing to risk your culture if you think that's what it's going to do? And that's clearly what Vrabel thought. Are you willing to risk your culture for a backup quarterback who was drafted in the 6th round, had one good game against Buffalo, given the circumstances? Is that the guy that you want to be giving that kind of power to and say, well, hey, we're willing to take that risk. He can come in and he could destroy that quarterback room. He could cause issues in the quarterback room, however you want to say it. But do you really want to risk the culture being upset by Joe Milton? Because if everything falls right, Drake May gets hurt, Joe Milton goes out there, Joe Milton balls, plays a great month of football, and then maybe you can get a 3rd-round pick for him or 4th-round pick. Are you willing to risk the culture? Are you willing to risk the quarterback room to get a 4th-round pick instead of a compensatory 5th-round pick? That was the question that needed to be answered. And Vrabel said, I'm not willing to risk it. And I agree with Mike Vrabel on this one. A 4th next year versus a compensatory 5th this year is not worth getting in the way of the program that you're trying to build. As fun as Joe Milton is, as fun as the backflips are, as great as his arm is, and that's the decision that they made. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe. Locked On Patriots podcast, by the way, new host, yours truly, Monday through Friday, if you want to check out that pod. I'm not going to be sharing content. Each podcast, each show is going to be unique. So if you want to swing on by over to Locked On Patriots podcast and subscribe and check out that work, I would love for you to do that. Continue to build this community as well, though. Everything Pats. Like, comment, and subscribe. Help us with the algorithm. Rate and review, Spotify and Apple Pods. And follow as well. And subscribers, we're less than 50 away from hitting the goal. Feel like we're going to get there. Goal is 6,500 subscribers on this channel by the first night of the draft. We got a little bit more than 2 weeks to go. I appreciate you. I love spending time with you. Hopefully you enjoyed the content today, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.